Hi, in this session we're going to be talking about textures and maps. So I'm just going to create just a box. I'm just going to create two boxes, okay, and play. And now just going to assign materials to those. So I'm just going to I'm going to press M on the keyboard to access the material editor. And I'm just going to click and drag, drop this here and this here and this here, okay. And I'm going to name them. This is I want it to be wood. This is I want it to be maybe brick as before, and this I'm gonna make it I want to get the texture of let's say cloth, because I have a texture of cloth. Okay, I just name them and assign them to the object. Now in the diffuse color, and most of those that I passed through in the previous session, they have this kind of small box. This box over here, it represents a map. Instead of having the value over here, for example, in my case, the color, I can import a map, a texture from wherever from my computer. And the same thing goes for the others. Okay, you can access them from here as shortcuts, but at the same time, you can just go down over the end of the maps, so you can access them from here. So this is the diffuse map, the reflection, the glossiness, the refraction, the glossiness, the refraction, opacity, bump, displacement, and so on. There's a lot of maps. Definitely we're not going to go through them all, but we're just going to go through the basics. Now, the first important thing, which is the most important, is the diffuse. Instead of having a color in here or a color over on all the materials, I'm just going to import a map. So I can press on here on this icon, or I can go to diffuse and I press on this. So it says no map. So if you press in here, it will go to the material and map browser. So we have to import something. So to import something, I'm just gonna close everything not to get confused. Just gonna search, which is the best way. So I'm gonna go search for something called Bitmap. Okay, which is this one. What's a bitmap is basically to get or load an image from my computer. And it's going to take me by default to my scene assets. And I just prepared few of those textures. I just imported them from the internet or wherever I got them from my computer. Okay, so now I just said this is going to be the material of which one we're working. We're working with this one, which is going to be cloth. Okay, so I'm just going to import this cloth material. Okay, and just going to say open. And I'm gonna get now this cloth over here. Instead of having the blue sphere or the green sphere or the yellow sphere, I have this texture on it. Great. Now it is set, this material is set to this object. Okay, you can make sure you can select this. You can see it's highlighted. If I want this texture to be seen in here, I need to press on this icon. It says show shaded material in viewport. So now I can see it in viewport or not. So I'm gonna show it in viewport, which is perfect. Now I can see the texture over here. Now you can see in here I have now something called bitmap and not V-Ray MTL. Now I am inside the bitmap options. If you go over here, you can go back to parent, or you can press over here and go back to the cloth, which is the parent. Okay, so the same thing, you can go here or here. So I'm gonna go one step back, and now I'm back to where I was. And as you can see next to diffuse, I have letter M, which means I have a map. And you can go over the maps in here. You can see I have a map over here, which is called, this is the name of the file or the image, which is a PNG file. So either you press over here or you press on this icon. I'm just going to go through the map again to the bitmap. Great. In the bitmap, I have a few things I have to worry about. The most important thing that I really care about for this level is basically tiling. Tiling is basically, I need to tile this object in X and Y. So I'm going to repeat this object several times to make, for example, in my case, these squares to be smaller or bigger. I want them to be rectangular or squarish. So if I tile it on X, you can see I'm tiling it on X. And as you can see, they're getting tighter and tighter in X. For example, let's say 4 times. And you can see the squares now, they just became rectangle because I'm tiling on X 4 times, but on Y 1. So if I want to have them squares, same as the original file, but maybe smaller, so I'm going to tile it 4 by 4. Now the squares are smaller. Or I can maybe tile it 0.5 and 0.5 and make the squares bigger. So the tiling is basically repeating the texture several times in X or several times in Y, or in my case, half of it. So I'm just seeing half of the image. So the more resolution the image you have, it's always better. Now, the second thing I care about is the angle. So I can rotate it on U and V and W. What are U, V, W is basically representing X, Y, and Z in terms of textures. Because the texture is a 2D, and we don't have a z-axis on it, so they just created something called UVW, which represent X, Y, Z. So I can just wrap this object along a 3D object, so I can work with the X and the Y and the Z axis, but instead of naming them X, Y, Z, they name them UVW for the textures. So in my case, I can rotate this image, make it rotate on X, I can rotate it on Y, as you can see, and I can rotate on Z. So you can see the rotation if needed. For example, I want the object to be maybe, let's say, 45 degrees, something like that. Then this is it. Okay, that's it. So if you go down to the bitmap parameter, this is the bitmap. So you can just go in here and maybe load another image. You can go to your desktop, you can go to your C drive or D drive, wherever you have your textures downloaded, or you have a library, for example, you can just access them. So for example, I don't want this cloth, I want this image. So now this image will be loaded. And then I can go back and maybe load this cloth, and this cloth will be loaded again. And you can see the image if you want, and at the same time you can crop the image. For example, I want to crop this area of the image. So instead of having the whole image, I want this part of the image. So I can just crop it in here and check on apply. When you apply, you can see things are changing behind. So I'm cropping this area. In my case, it doesn't matter because it's the same thing. Sometimes I get a texture, I won't be able to find this texture. Maybe this texture have a watermark or something, and I really need to use it. So I just have to crop it. But definitely, if I crop it, I'm losing from the resolution. But maybe sometimes it's really the case, and I have to do this. So if you turn off apply, it doesn't matter if you crop or not. So if you're not applying it, so this is basically taking the whole image. Great. So this is basically how to import a texture into 3D Max. In my case, I just imported this texture into the bitmap in here on the diffuse tab. So I have a diffuse map. Instead of the color pink, now I have the diffuse color. In here, in the maps, I have another extra option, which is this value. It says 100. So if you can see, I cannot go more. So it's 100, the maximum value. So this is 100%, for example. 100% of this image I'm seeing. Great. So what if I put 50%? So I'm going to see 50% of this image, and the other 50% is basically the original color, which is the diffuse color, which by default is pink. So I'm seeing this color, I can see it better in here, it's pinkish. So the same texture, but a bit pinkish. So I can just do this, let's say, for example, 90%. I want it to be the same exact texture, but I want it to have a small tint of pink or maybe other colors. For example, I want to change it to maybe a red. So now it has a red tint, a very small tint because it's just 90. If you wanted to have more tint, I just have to lower it. And now you can see it's more reddish, maybe 70%, maybe 80%, depending on the value. So I can play around with the value. That's for the diffuse. Now, I'm just going to go also on this floor. Okay, I just said this, I want it to be wood, for example. I'm just going to go to the diffuse. I'm going to go bitmap. And I'm going to access the wood. This is wood. Great. Show shaded material in viewport. And I can see it. I can tile it, for example, 3 by 3. Okay. Make sure that the texture you're importing is tileable. If they are not tileable, you cannot see, they won't be good when you tile them. Okay, let's say I'm gonna rotate it 90 degrees. I want it to be on the sideways. Let's say this, the planks. That's it. So this is my wood. Now, I can add reflection to the wood. I can add glossiness to wood. For example, I want it to be reflective and I want it to be a bit glossy. For example, 0.8 and Fresnel reflection or whatever. That's great. This is what I want. Now, I'm just gonna introduce another thing. I'm just gonna make this back to 1, just to load easily in here. So I'm gonna make it back to 1. So this is it. Now I'm just gonna go back to the maps, and one of the maps that are also useful, it's called the bump map. The bump map is usually an image to be loaded as black and white. You can load a colored image, but when you import it to Bitmap, it will just convert it to a grayscale. So I'm just gonna go here, and I'm gonna go back to Bitmap. But in this case, I'm just gonna load the same image, but this one. Okay, so it's a black and white image. What does it do? The black and white image, it will do the inside the bump map, it will make this image to be pushed outward and inward to have more roughness to the surface. As you can see, I have some kind of roughness to it. I can see it clearly. Great. If you go back to the option where the bump is, this is the value of the bump. The more bump you want, you can see I have very bumpy surface now. And definitely if you go negative, in this case you can go negative, it's not 100%, you can go up to 999. So I'm going to go minus 100. Okay, you can see that the image is flipped. What is white is pushed inward and what's black is pushed outward. In the other case, it's the white pushed outward and the black pushed inward. So it's not the big deal. So if you did the image and it's the wrong way, just go the negative way. So now I'm going to go 100 instead of minus 100, and you can see it's going to flip. Okay, great. So this is what I want. But as you can see, the planks of wood are going sideways and they're smaller. Why? Because inside the diffuse map, I just changed its properties. So I changed the tiling, which made it 3 by 3, and the W is 90. So now I have to do the same thing for this, so they can just be placed over each other exactly. So I'm just going to make tiling 3 by 3. Now the bump map is getting smaller, and now I'm going to do the rotation on W 90 degrees, and now they will be placed over each other, and it will look more realistic. So now I can see that the wood are having some kind of 3D effect. As you can see in here, it's having this kind of bumpiness and roughness to the surface. That's perfect. This is what I want. So this is called a bump map. So diffuse map and bump map are the mostly used, and definitely, especially for our beginner level. Now, I'm just going to go through some other options. For example, opacity and reflection and refraction. So I'm just going to go, I'm just going to make it easier. I'm just going to create a plane. Okay, this is my plane, so I'm going to make it 90 degrees. Sorry, 90 degrees. And move it upward. Okay, great. Now, just going to assign a new material to this sphere, to this, plane. And on this sphere, I'm just going to keep it green. And I'm going to add a map to the opacity. This map is going to be definitely a bitmap, an image that I have on my computer. In my case, I'm going to get this, which is my logo. It's also black and white. It's technically a mask. Everything white is going to remove. Everything black is going to remain. Okay? Or if I wanted the opposite, I can just flip it. I'm just going to say OK, and I'm going to show, and this is it. Okay? Now, if you can see in here, everything black is deleted. Okay, as you can see, it's transparent because of opacity, and everything which is white remained, which is going to be taking the same material as the diffuse color that I put in here. If I change this color, for example, I make it maybe more greenish or yellowish or whatever color, you can see in here that it's yellow now, but it's cut where I have this kind of texture. Great. So this is perfect if I want to have some kind of transparency, and not the whole object to be transparent, but some part of the object to be transparent. So I can just draw the design. I can do it on any software if you know to work on any other software, or just import an image from the internet that has the specific detail you need. So now everything black is transparent and everything white is non-transparent. What if I want the opposite? So you can just go on any other software such as Photoshop or anything and just flip it over there. But you can do this in Max. So I'm just going to go back to the opacity texture, which is in here. Just going to go in here. Okay. And I'm going to just load or go to the last tab, which is output. Okay. That's it. And I'm going to press invert. Now it's going to be inverted. As you can see, it's inverted. Now, my logo and text is visible, and the other part is non-visible. So instead of going and saving the file from other software and getting it back, you can just do it simply in here. The same thing goes for all the other images. So output, you can play with the invert. Perfect. Now I have this kind of effect on the opacity. I can do the same thing on the reflection and refraction. In my case, if I take this image, click and drag, and place it on the refraction, on the refraction, and I'm gonna just swap it, just gonna put it here, I'm gonna end up almost the same result. But the only difference in here, it's not going to be transparent. It's going to be something like a glass now. It has index of refraction. And maybe this is what I want. I want it to be more glassy and more like index of refraction I have on it. And I want it to be, for example, refractive. And I have some places with which I can find this texture. And other places I can find this color in my case, or other places I can see it's transparent. I can just change the color in here, or I can import another file. I can just import a bitmap, which is, for example, instead of having color black, I want it to be maybe brick. Now it will become brick in here instead of the yellow, because I inserted the texture now. So we have to wait till it loads. So this is my brick. I can just do the tiling for the brick. Maybe I want it to be 3 by 3, make them smaller. So I'm just going to wait a bit to refresh. Now you can see they're smaller and transparent. Definitely I can just load any image. So I'm just going to load another image, and maybe this wood or whatever. Just I'm importing anything. Now the image will be replaced with the texture. Instead of having this color, what was yellow, now it's becoming something different. Great. So now just gonna go to this value, and I'm gonna just go back to parent, to where I was, and right click in here, and I'm gonna cut it or clear it. Okay, so it's back to yellow now. That's the image inside refraction. As you can see, I just placed it in the maps section, but it's the same as if it's here. Now I want to place it on the reflection section. So I'm just going to copy it from here to here and make it swap. So now the object will be reflective only on those surfaces which are white. Okay, I cannot see them very well. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn off Fresnel reflection. Okay, it will become more mirror. So as you can see, where the white is 100% reflective, it's mirror, and where the black is, it's taking the diffuse color. So now I'm making different kinds of texture, and I can combine definitely the diffuse map, having with a reflection map, and having with a new refraction map with a bump map, and get more realistic materials. So I can also in here have this Fresnel on, back where you cannot see it, and I want the reflection to be more, so I can click here and take off the lock and bump this value maybe more. So I'm going to make it 3, and now you can see it's going to be more reflective on those areas, and the other areas won't be. That's definitely white and black. If you have white and gray, in my case, I do have this option. So I'm just going to go and load another image, and I'm going to import this, which is the same object, but it's not 100% reflective. It's a bit grayish. So you can see it's not 100%. So maybe, for example, I'm just going to load this gray image to the refraction. Okay, I'm just going to swap it. Okay, now it's going to be transparent, which is not 100% transparent. Okay, it's not very, very transparent, as you can see. But at the same time, I'm just going to load an image in here, which is a bitmap. And I can load it the same, let me load the same image. So I'm going to just load the same image to the reflection and just copy it now. Okay, and you can make it as instance. So if I adjusted one of them, the other will be adjusted. So I'm just going to have it reflective. So now I have refraction and reflection at the same time. So I have to wait till it goes properly. Now it's correct. So you can see refraction and reflection at the same time with an image. I also have, let's say, instead of having the yellow color, I can just import a bitmap to the diffuse and combine all these together. So this is basically a quick introduction to maps and textures, and how I can import my own textures into 3D Max to have something more realistic, such as maybe have something like glass, or have something maybe not just glass, like regular glass. I can just add an image in here. For example, I'm just gonna go to this option in here. I'm just gonna load, in my case, because I don't have now other option, but we can load some from the internet. So I'm just gonna go bitmap, and I'm gonna load this wood because it's black and white. So I'm just gonna load it to the bitmap. I'm gonna add more details in here, roughness to it. It's going to be very rough now. I'm just gonna work around with it, but I have to wait a bit till it loads. So just a few seconds, I can see it in here, but still loading here. You see, this is what I want, but this is a bit too much. It's not a big deal. So first of all, I'm just gonna make the tiling. I'm gonna make it, let's say maybe 10 by 10. Just wanna make it very small. Just gonna tile it 10 by 10, and definitely I have to wait. I can see it in here, it's better. I have to wait in here because it's a big show in here. This is what I want. Maybe I'm gonna rotate it. I don't want it to be straight. I want it to be, let's say, 45 degrees. I can just do this, but it's taking a bit of time now. It's kind of locked. Just have to wait a couple of seconds, and then I can fix it. Okay, so I'm just gonna make it, let's say, 45 degrees. So it's going to be some kind of diagonal, but the value in here, I think it's too much. It's a lot of bump on it. Okay, by default the bump value is 30. Okay, I don't remember if I have it now 30 because I was working around, but it's fine. I'm just gonna go back to parent. I'm just gonna go to the bump value, and you can see it's 30. I don't want it to be 30. Maybe I want it to be less, maybe 10, maybe 5. Just want to add this kind of detail to it. And I definitely have to wait till it loads. And then you will see that it's going to be something like that. I want to see that the surface is not super clean and sharp. I have some kind of bump on it, some kind of surface roughness to it. And definitely we can add glossiness to the reflection and glossiness to the refraction to make it more glossy on the reflection and refraction with the bump map, and we can achieve better results.